Hello and welcome back. So today in this episode, we are going to introduce coding styles. Okay, so programming style or coding style refers to the technique used in writing the source code for a computer program that we all know. So most coding styles or programming styles are designed to help programmers quickly read and understand the program as well as avoid making errors. So we can say that a good coding style can overcome the deficiencies of a programming language. And the goal of good coding style is to provide understandable, straightforward, and elegant code. The coding style used in various programs may be delivered from the coding standards or code conventions of a company or other computing organization, and also considering the preferences of the actual programmer. Now, some general rules or guidelines in respect of coding style include clarity and simplicity of expression. So the programmers should be designed in such a manner so that the objectives of the program is very clear. Then our next guideline is naming. In a program, you are required to name the module, processes, and variable, and so on. So care should be taken that the naming style should not be cryptic or non-representative. Suppose we say an example, if A is equal to 3.14 into R means it is supposed to be area of circle is equal to 3.14 into radius. Okay, that should be non-representative and should not be cryptic. Now, our next guideline is control constructs. It is desirable that as much as a possible single entry and single exit constructs used. So it is better to use single entry and a single exit loop to be used. Then we have information hiding. Information hiding means the information secure in the data structures should be hidden from the rest of the system where possible. And information hiding can decrease the coupling between modules and make the system more maintainable. Okay. We can by information hiding, we can secure the data structures or datas inside the modules. Our next guideline is nesting. That is, deep nesting of loops and conditions greatly harm the static and dynamic behavior of a program. It also becomes difficult to understand the program logic, so it is desirable to avoid deep nesting. So we can use simple loops and conditions. Then we have user-defined types. Make heavy use of user-defined data types like enum, class structure, and union. These data types make your program code easy to write and easy to understand. Then we have the module size. It should be uniform. The size of the module should not be too big or too small. If it is large, it is not generally functionally cohesive. If it is too small, it leads to unnecessary overheads. Then we have module interface. A module with a complex interface should be carefully examined. Then we have side effects. When a module is invoked, it sometimes has a side effect of modifying the program state. So such side effects should be avoided whereas possible. Okay. After the coding style, we have modern programming language. Here is an overview of the programming style: simplicity, naming, control constructs, information hiding, nesting, user-defined types, module size, module interface, and side effects. We have modern programming language features. The first one is type checking. So, type checking is the process of verifying and enforcing the constraints of types, and it can occur either at compile time statically or at runtime dynamically. Okay, we are checking the types of the data which we are using. So actually the existence of types is useless without a process of verifying that those types make logical sense in the program. So the program can be executed successfully. This is where the use of type checking comes in. Actually, we have to successfully execute the program. So for that, type checking is a necessary point. Okay. And type checking is all about ensuring that the program is type safe, meaning that the possibility of type errors is kept to a minimum. Okay, now let's see what is a type error. A type error is an erroneous program behavior in which an operation occurs, or maybe it tries to occur on a particular data type that it is not meant to occur on. Okay, where we use a data type which never provides an error, but actually an error occurs there. That is supposed to be a type error. So here many programming languages throw type errors which halt the runtime or compilation of the program, while many other languages have built-in safety features to handle a type error and continue running. But regardless of all these, it is necessary to do the process of type checking. So first and foremost, a feature of modern programming language is the type checking. Now the two primary methods of type checking is static type checking and dynamic type checking. Okay, now, a language is statically typed if the type of a variable is known at compile time instead of at runtime. This already you have studied in C, C++, Java, etc. So here common examples of statically typed languages include Ada, C, C++, C#, Jade, Java, Fortran, Haskell, ML, Pascal, and Scala. The big benefit of static type checking is that it allows many type errors to be caught early in the development cycle, that is in the compile time itself. So static typing usually results in compiled code that executes more quickly, because when the compiler knows the exact data types that are in use, it can produce optimized machine code. Now, static type checkers evaluate only the type information that can be determined at compile time, but are able to verify that the checked conditions hold for all possible executions of the program, which eliminates the need to repeat type checks every time the program is executed. So, since it is performed during compile time, we need not always use the type checker to check it always during execution. Then we have dynamic type checking. Actually, it is a process of verifying the type safety of a program at runtime. Common dynamically typed languages include Groovy, JavaScript, Lisp, Lua, Objective-C, PHP, Prolog, Python, Ruby, Smalltalk, and TCL. All these languages are equipped with dynamic type checking process. So most type-safe languages include some form of dynamic type checking, even if they also have a static type checker. Okay, so the reason is that it may useful features or properties are difficult or impossible to verify statically. So actually it has both. Some languages will be having both dynamic and static type checkers, and a dynamic check is needed to verify that the operation is safe. Now our next feature is user-defined data types. Modern language allows users to define types like the enumerated type. Such use of defining data types makes it possible for humans and computer systems to distinguish entities from the problem domain. So actually, user-defined data types that segment the problem domain in logical manner can greatly improve the clarity and readability of a source program. It also provides increased data security like type checking. For example, when working with dates, types can be defined for the day of the week. For example, type days, we can give the 7 days in a week. And variables can then be declared of this type. This day type, the variables can be declared then. Such types makes the program much clearer than defining codes for each day and then working with codes. So for simplicity purpose, we use user-defined data types. Our next feature is data abstraction. Abstraction is a technique for arranging complexity of computer system. It works by establishing a level of simplicity on which a person interacts with the system, suppressing the more complex details below the current level. So here, abstraction can be applied to control or to data. So control abstraction is the abstraction of actions, while data abstraction is that of data structures, as the name suggests. Control abstraction involves the use of subroutines and control flow abstractions, and data abstraction, on the other hand, allows handling pieces of data in meaningful ways. For example, it is the basic motivation behind the data type. We are using data type means we need data abstraction. Our next feature is exception handling. Exception handling is a very popular technique for incorporating fault tolerance into software system. So actually it allows developers to structure the redundant code that is added to deal with the exceptional conditions that may occur, separating it from the code responsible for the normal operating flow. Actually, I think you have studied in C or C++ about throw. These methods are used for exception handling there. We write IO exception, throw method, etc. we use for exception handling. An exception condition is signaled by means of an exception that is raised by the normal code. So when this occurs, the underlying EHS means exception handling system, interrupts the normal flow and transfers the control to an appropriate exception handler which can deal with the exceptional conditions associated with the type of exception raised. See, these exceptions may be like division by zero, or some kind of small type of exceptions also come as, or small types of errors may also be encountered. All these are handled under the EHS system. Our next handling contexts are regions of code in which exceptions of the same type are treated in the same way itself. So the exception handling systems of C++, Java and C# adhere to this model of exception handling. That is, they are being treated as a separate code of block. Now we have the next feature, that is concurrency mechanisms. It is like concurrency in software engineering means the collection of techniques and mechanisms that enable a computer program to perform several different tasks simultaneously or apparently simultaneously. It is like the operating system of any computer, for example, Windows, Unix, Linux, make use of concurrency to enable the user to do several different things simultaneously, or to allow many different users to access the computer at the same time. See, actually, one very common example is that in our lab, we used to take printouts of our programs, right? These programs are being printed from different systems. That is, we are being using one printer for printing all the programs in different systems. That is, we are using a peripheral device which is being commonly shared. This is also known as concurrency. Okay. I hope today's topic is very clear. We are ending with Unit 4 here. Thank you so much.